John had always lived a quiet life on his old ranch. The land had been in his family for generations. And though he was now in his 70s, he still woke before sunrise every day to check on his cattle, repair fences, and make sure everything was in order. Life was simple, slow, and peaceful, exactly how he liked it. The townspeople respected him, calling him kind and dependable, though he preferred the company of his animals and the open fields to that of people. That morning, John was walking along the far edge of his property, where the grass grew tall and wild, and the trees were thick. He liked this part of the ranch. It was quiet, untouched, and full of the sounds of nature. Birds chirped, wind rustled through the leaves, and somewhere in the distance, a river gurgled over rocks. But today, there was a strange silence that made him uneasy. As he rounded a bend, he noticed something unusual. Near an old, crumbling barn that he hadn't used in years, he saw a flicker of movement. John squinted, shading his eyes with a hand. At first, he thought it might be an animal, maybe a stray dog or a fox, but the movement was too deliberate, too careful. Someone was there. He walked slowly, careful not to make a sound. The closer he got, the more he realized it wasn't an animal at all. It was a girl, very young, with long blonde hair that was tangled and dusty. She was crouched in the corner of the barn, and her hands were bound. Her clothes were dirty and torn, and her face was pale. The moment she saw John, her eyes widened in fear, and she backed away as far as the small space would allow. "Please, don't hurt me," she whispered, her voice trembling. It was barely audible over the wind, but John heard it clearly. John froze. He was not used to dealing with strangers, and certainly not in situations like this. His mind raced. Who was she? How did she get here? And, most importantly, was she in danger? He slowly lowered himself to the ground, keeping his hands visible. "Hey there," he said gently. "I'm not going to hurt you. My name is John. Can you tell me what's going on?" The girl shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "Please, only you can save me," she whispered, her voice breaking. They sold me. I don't know what will happen if they find me." John felt a chill run down his spine. The words were enough to make any man uneasy, let alone someone like him who had spent his life away from the troubles of the world. He had heard stories in town, rumors of people being tricked or taken by criminals, but he never imagined it would happen on his land. Right under his nose. He took a slow breath and tried to stay calm. "It's all right," he said softly. "You're safe for now. I'll make sure nothing happens to you." The girl's eyes searched his face, looking for any sign of deceit or danger. Finding none, she nodded slightly and let out a shaky breath. She told him her name was Emily, and that she was just 14. She explained, as best she could through sobs, that a group of people had tricked her family into thinking they were helping her get a job in another town. Instead, they had taken her to a place where she was treated like property and forced to do work against her will. She had managed to escape during the night, but she didn't know where to go, and she feared the people would come after her. John listened, his heart heavy. He had never felt anger like this before, not at the thought of people hurting someone so young. He felt protective instinct take over, stronger than anything he had felt in years. He knew he had to act, but he also knew he couldn't rush. He carefully offered her some food and water he had in his bag. "Eat something," he said. "You need your strength. Then we'll figure out the rest." Emily hesitated, but eventually took a few bites. Her hands trembled as she held the sandwich, but she ate. John kept his eyes on the barn door, alert for any signs of danger. He thought about calling the authorities immediately, but he also knew it could be risky. He didn't want anyone to rush in without a plan and put Emily in more danger. As they waited, John talked to her in a calm voice, trying to make her feel safe. He asked about her favorite things, her home, and even her dreams. Emily's eyes lit up slightly as she spoke about the small joys of life that she had been forced to forget: the warmth of her mother's hug, the taste of fresh berries, and the sound of her little dog barking when she returned home from school. For a moment, the fear in her eyes softened, and John felt a flicker of hope. He realized that even in the darkest situations, small acts of kindness could bring comfort. Hours passed slowly. John had to keep moving carefully, listening for any unusual sounds outside the barn. At one point, he thought he heard voices, but when he peeked through a crack in the wood, there was no one. Still, he knew the people who had taken Emily might return. He had to be prepared. By late afternoon, John decided it was time to move Emily to a safer location. He used old blankets to make a stretcher and helped her stand. Though she was weak, she trusted him completely now, and she clung to him as they walked slowly across the fields. Every sound made her flinch, and John could feel her fear through her grip. As they reached a hidden part of the ranch, John spotted an old shed he used for storing tools. It was small, but it would protect Emily while they waited for the authorities. He helped her inside and made sure the door could be secured. "You'll be safe here for now," he said. "I promise." Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know what I would have done without you." John smiled gently. "You're stronger than you think," he said. "And you're not alone anymore." Note: that evening, John went to the nearest town to contact the local police. He explained the situation as carefully as possible, making sure they understood the danger and urgency. The authorities promised to send officers immediately, but John knew it could take some time. Returning to the shed, he brought Emily some more food and blankets. He kept a watchful eye on the surrounding area, feeling a mix of fear and determination. He was old, but he would do whatever it took to keep this girl safe. As night fell, Emily finally slept, exhausted from the day's events. John sat outside the shed, staring at the stars. He thought about how his quiet life had suddenly changed. He had faced something he never imagined. And yet, he felt a strange sense of purpose. He realized that sometimes, life calls ordinary people to do extraordinary things. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing for certain. He would protect Emily with everything he had. And so, the old rancher, who had spent his life in solitude, found himself at the center of a real-life battle against cruelty and injustice. His courage and kindness had become the only thing standing between a young girl and a life of suffering. The first part of this story ends with John sitting under the moonlight, quietly determined, while Emily slept safely inside the shed. Outside, the world was still, but inside, their lives had already begun to change forever. John spent the night sitting outside the shed, staring at the stars. The cool night air did little to calm his nerves. Every shadow, every rustle in the trees, made him tense. He knew the people who had taken Emily might be looking for her. But he also knew that panicking would help no one. He had to stay calm, alert, and ready. By morning, Emily woke slowly, her eyes red from crying and lack of sleep. She looked at John with a mixture of fear and relief. "Did they come for me?" she asked softly. "No," John replied, smiling gently. "You're safe. I stayed awake to make sure no one came near." Emily nodded, hugging herself tightly. "Thank you. I didn't think anyone would help me." John patted her shoulder. "You're not alone anymore. And we're going to make sure the people who hurt you can't do it to anyone else." They spent the morning carefully planning. John knew he couldn't confront the gang on his own. He didn't have the strength or the numbers. But he could help the authorities by giving them information and keeping Emily safe until help arrived. He wrote down everything Emily could remember. The way the men looked, the vehicles they used, the barn where she had been kept before she escaped. When they were ready, John called the local police again. This time, he gave them more details, explaining that Emily was safe on his ranch and that the criminals might be nearby. The officers promised to arrive as quickly as possible, but John knew it would still take time. While waiting, he continued to watch over Emily. He taught her small things, to stay calm and safe, how to listen carefully for sounds, how to stay hidden, and how to move quietly. Emily listened, absorbing every word. She had been through so much, but now, for the first time, she felt hope. Hours passed slowly. Every car that passed by the ranch made Emily flinch, but John kept reassuring her. He brought her more food, poured her a warm drink, and even told a few quiet stories from his own life. Stories of the ranch, of his childhood, and the times he had learned lessons the hard way. Emily listened, smiling faintly, and for a moment, it felt like life could return to normal. But John knew they couldn't stay hidden forever. The gang could be watching from nearby, and they had to act carefully. He decided to create a distraction that would draw attention away from Emily's hiding place if anyone approached. Using old tools and materials from the ranch, he rigged a few harmless noisemakers around the property. He knew how to make things rattle, bang, or whistle without causing damage, just enough to make someone think someone was moving around. By late afternoon, distant sirens finally sounded. John's heart lifted. The authorities were coming. He whispered to Emily, "They're here. You'll be safe soon." The police arrived quickly, moving with precision. John guided them to the shed where Emily had been hiding. The officers were professional and kind, immediately taking over, ensuring Emily was comfortable and safe. Emily clung to John for a brief moment, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. "You saved me." John nodded, swallowing hard. "Just promise me you'll stay safe," he said. The officers then led John to a spot near the barn, where they began searching for evidence of the gang. Hidden cameras and some of John's noise traps helped them understand the layout of the criminals' operations. Over the next few hours, the officers moved carefully, securing the barn and nearby areas, collecting evidence, and preparing to arrest the suspects. Meanwhile, John stayed close to Emily, helping her stay calm as the authorities worked. She was still trembling from the fear and trauma, but with John by her side, she felt courage growing inside her. She began asking questions about the ranch, about John's life, about the stars above, and slowly, she started to smile. Finally, after what seemed like hours, the police came back with the news. They had arrested the criminals. They had found the vehicles, the barns, and all the evidence needed to prosecute them. John felt a wave of relief wash over him. Emily was safe. Justice would be served. Emily looked up at him, her eyes shining. "I can't believe it. I'm really safe now," she said softly. John smiled, though he was exhausted. "You are, and it's over. You don't have to be afraid anymore." The officers then took Emily to a safe place, where she would be reunited with her family. John accompanied them for a short distance, ensuring she felt secure. When the reunion happened, Emily ran into her parents' arms, sobbing and laughing at the same time. John watched from a distance, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. He had never expected his life to change in this way, but now he realized how meaningful it was to help someone in need. After the authorities left, John returned to his ranch. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The land was quiet again, but it felt different now. He had faced fear, uncertainty, and danger. Yet he had remained steadfast. He had made a real difference. That night, as he sat on his porch, John thought about Emily. He wondered how her life would change now, and he hoped she would grow up safe and happy. He realized that sometimes, life puts ordinary people in extraordinary situations. And courage doesn't come from strength alone. It comes from the heart. John also reflected on his own life. For years, he had lived quietly, thinking that being good meant simply taking care of his land and animals. But now, he understood that true goodness sometimes means stepping into danger for someone who cannot protect themselves. It meant listening, understanding, and acting when others might hesitate. As the stars appeared above, John smiled quietly. The ranch was peaceful once more, the night calm and still. He knew the memory of this day would stay with him forever, not because of fear, but because of the bond he had formed with a young girl who had trusted him completely. In the following weeks, John continued his normal life, but the town spoke of his bravery. Neighbors came by to thank him, to shake his hand, to tell him how proud they were. But John remained humble. "I only did what anyone should do," he said softly. Inside, though, he felt proud. He had faced a situation that many would run from, and he had saved a life. Emily's family visited the ranch once to thank John properly. They brought flowers, homemade bread, and smiles full of gratitude. Emily ran around the fields, laughing and playing like a child finally free. John watched her, heart swelling. The world could be cruel, yes, but kindness and courage could shine brighter than fear. And so, life on the ranch returned to its quiet rhythm. The cows grazed peacefully, the wind whispered through the trees, and John tended his land as he always had. But now, he carried a story in his heart. A story of courage, hope, and the extraordinary bond between a simple old rancher and a brave young girl. He knew that no matter what happened in the future, he had done something truly meaningful. He had proven that even ordinary people could make a difference. And most importantly, he had shown Emily that there were still good people in the world, people who would fight to protect her, no matter what. The story ends with John sitting on his porch under the night sky, feeling a deep sense of peace. Emily was safe, the criminals caught, and justice served. And though he returned to his quiet life, John knew that sometimes, even in the calmest places, true courage could change everything.